Hello, Raindrops. Welcome to Governminute Commentary number 2. I want to talk to you today about something that is big, something that should bother you if it doesn't, if you don't know about it, if you're not sure, something that should scare you. It is our national debt. Every year the government has a budget, and every year the government spends more than it takes in taxes, or it spends less. If it spends more, it's called a deficit. If it spends less, it's called a surplus. Most of the time in our nation's history, through wartime, through peacetime, any time, the government has run a deficit. The accumulation of these deficits over the years adds up to our national debt. Our national debt, as early as in 1990, was only $3 trillion, that's with a T, trillion dollars. Government over the years had spent $3 trillion more than it had taken in taxes. By 2000, that number was up to $6 trillion. Democrats, Republicans, Democrat presidents, Republican presidents, Democrat House, Democrat Senate, Republican House, Republican Senate, they've all added to this debt. By 2008, the total was up to $10 trillion. $10 trillion. By 2012, we were up to $15 trillion. This is not a partisan thing, other than saying both parties have led us to this point. Both parties have contributed mightily to this point. By 2016, the total was up to $19 trillion. So in 1990, $3 trillion, 2016, 26 years later, $19 trillion. And here we are, 5 years after that massive number, and the total debt of the United States sits right now at $28 trillion. Did you hear that? Let me repeat it. $28 trillion. I'll let that sink in for a moment. Please understand these numbers have all been rounded to make them easier to understand. $28 trillion. If you take that $28 trillion and divide it by the number of people in this country, approximately 335 million people, every person you see, every man, every woman, every child, every newborn, every 100-year-old, if you break it down by person, the debt comes out to $85,000 apiece. Those politicians are horrible. But are they the only ones to blame? How many of us pay attention? How many of us care? There's an old comedy movie called Brain Donors, came out in the early 90s. And it's this shyster lawyer, imagine that, a shyster lawyer who's trying to bilk this old rich woman out of her money. He comes one day with a huge diamond-encrusted bracelet, and he tells her, "For you," and under his breath, "From you." Our politicians do the same thing. They take our tax money and then bring jobs and projects back to their states and districts. They might as well say, "For you, from you." And we swoon, and we're thrilled that someone used our money to give us something. $28 trillion is now 130% of the GDP. We're talking trillions of dollars here. Let's make this something understandable. 130% of basically the nation's income. So let's pare this down to something more understandable. If your income is $100,000, this 130% debt to GDP, debt to income, means your $100,000 income you also have $130,000 worth of debt. Both parties, and yes, me and you. Because we don't say anything. We don't demand more. We don't demand better. We let them get away with it. 95% of these people get reelected. Because we just don't pay attention. We just don't care. A lot of this debt is held by American citizens in the form of savings bonds and treasury bills, insurance companies, retirement accounts, etc., etc. Some of it is owned by foreign governments. So what are we going to do about it? Government spends an awful lot of money. Here's what I propose. For the next fiscal year, government cuts 1 measly % of its budget. 1%. I work for a company that is very efficient, that is very lean and mean, and yet I know we could cut 1%. Government is bloated, it's wasteful, it doesn't know what it has, what it doesn't have, so it orders more, doesn't know what happened to these hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of dollars go. It's a big black hole where money just disappears to the tune of $28 trillion. So I say government cuts its budget by 1% a year. Here's another idea for the Congress and the President. If our budget is out of balance by, let's say, 12%, we spend 12% more than we bring in, I say their pay gets cut by 12%. See how quickly that'll turn around. It's going to take me and you, all of us, maybe a flood of raindrops? It's going to take all of us to say enough is enough. Democrats, Republicans, both to blame. Both parties are driving us toward a cliff. One party's going 100 miles an hour, the other party's going at 80 miles an hour, but they're both going toward a fiscal cliff. I'll let you decide which one is which. This will be paid one day, one way or another. Thank you for joining me. I hope you paid attention because there will be a test at the next election. This is Mr. A reminding you that we, the people, are the government. Thanks for watching. See you next time.